What's up, Dad Bod Nation? Dad Bod Steve. We got another story here for you today. Awesome podcast. I have one of my good friends who I met on Instagram through other people. He is Ricky. Ricky, thank you so much for coming.
What's up, bro? How's it going, man?
Good, man. Good, man. Hey, introduce yourself to the camera.
What's up, y'all? It's your boy Smaqs. A lot of people know me as Smaqs. My real name's Ricky. But yeah, man, I'm here at Dad Bod, man. I know one of my colleagues, reached out, shot me an email and said, hey, man, you need to get tapped in with Dad Bod, the Dad Bod podcast, man. And when you reached out, bro, and I'm all about it, bro. I kind of been checking out your content, seeing kind of the motivation that you have, man. And I feel like our stories align, you know what I mean? So I feel like that's a good movement for sure. So I feel like it was inevitable, man. I was going to pull up, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it relates to so many people that I work with on a daily basis, right?
Yeah.
The kids in the group homes going through the same things you did. And what's crazy is he said, I know a nutritionist.
Yeah.
Because my podcast is about different things, right?
Absolutely.
Health and everything. And then he says, hey, here's a nutritionist. You sent me all your information, but then you put your story. And I said, wait, this is so much more interesting
for sure.
than the nutrition. Let's go with that. So go ahead and give us your background. Where did it all start?
Where did nutrition start, or just
no, just life in general?
I was born in San Diego, California. Like I had mentioned before, I come from poverty. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Very humble beginnings. Both my parents are dropouts of high school. Former gang members. Honorable discharge. You know what I mean? They stopped gang banging because they got old and gave their life to God. You know what I mean?
Oh, cool.
But yeah, man, I just grew up in the streets of Southeast San Diego. It's a rough part of San Diego out there. I grew up in gangs, predominantly Black, predominantly Hispanic, and Polynesian neighborhoods. Lot of gang activity, a lot of crime. So these are the things that I was brought up in, right? These are the activities that I was around from friends. So I was taught at a young age. And I always talk about this to my wife. I was like, dude, I honestly don't know where the influence of me living that thug life, right? I don't know where it came from, because as far as specifically, I was around gangs, I was around people, but nobody taught me how to steal. Nobody taught me how to really sell drugs. Nobody taught me how to commit crimes to support myself. These are just things that I feel like I kind of inherently just did. You know what I mean? But I'm sure there was some type of influence. And, I've been in and out of juvenile hall at a young age, very young. I think I caught my first case at like 11 years old, very young.
Go ahead and tell us about that. Like what was the case? Bro, what did you get caught with?
I was in, so I'm Polynesian. I'm half Polynesian and half Hispanic. I'm half Mexican.
Okay.
And I was in Hawaii. We were out there. We moved around a lot. My family moved around a lot. We always picked up and moved. And we got a lot of family out there in Hawaii too. So my mom was like, hey, we're going to move out to Hawaii. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm like 11 years old. And, we found some spray cans. And I was like, dude, let's go right on walls. Let's go tag up some walls, right? So, dude, we're walking through the canal, like me and my cousins. It's like, we're 11, dude, 11, 12, 6th grade.
Yep.
And we're just tagging up on the walls in these canals. And I remember this lady, she came out, she was like, hey, what are you guys doing? Stop doing that. We're going to call the cops. And I was like, man, fuck you, whatever. You know what I mean? Kind of just continued doing what I was doing. And I want to say like a good mile down, like a good 30, 40 minutes later, we come to this bridge. We're under the bridge. I'm graffitiing the wall. And all I hear is, get on the ground. I turn around and it's a bunch of Polynesian fucking cops, dog. It was actually Pearl City Police Department, Pearl City. Anyways, bro. And Honolulu Police Department. That's what it was. But dude, yeah, man, that was my first time I caught a case. That was my first time ever going to experiencing the judicial system, going to court. You know what I mean? And I'll never forget this, man. Rest in peace to my auntie Fui. Like I said, I come from a long line of women that are thug women. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Gangster women. But my auntie, rest in peace, my auntie Fui, man, and my mom. They took me to court, and I'll never forget this. My aunt, I don't want to say she was proud, but she was like, "Come, boy, let's take pictures." We're taking pictures in front of the court, dude. So as at court, and as a young kid, impressionable, right? Even though my aunt wasn't glorifying it, my mind took it as, man, this is a cool thing. My aunt who loves me, we're taking pictures right now in the court. You know what I mean? So I felt like that kind of that kind of glamorized it a little bit and gave it that lore of like it was kind of cool, you know what I mean? So, like I said, dude, I've been in and out of incarceration. Like that was, like I said, 11 years old. That was the first time I've ever been incarcerated, or first time I've ever experienced cops or the judicial system. And it kind of just snowballed from there, dude. Honestly, going on through life. I like I said, I didn't have much. Growing up in high school, and kids having nice shoes, kids having nice clothes, and my parents, they did the best to raise me. My dad was a very hard worker. He still is to this day. You know what I mean? And but they didn't have the education to put them strategically in a better financial situation to raise us, right? We're like 5 kids in a 2-bedroom apartment. All the brothers and sisters sharing the one room. We're sharing one bathroom. That's the type of living I grew up in. Living off of welfare. Having those things. So I learned at a young age that if I wanted something, I need to go out and get it myself, whatever means necessary, right? So I'm out there stealing. It eventually gravitated towards robbing people, just taking whatever I wanted, man. So it was rough, but I look back, you know what I mean? I can't say I regret anything because I was never a sad kid. I was happy, even though I didn't realize it, but we were poor. I lived a good life. You know what I mean? From what I feel, So yeah, incarceration started young. You know what I mean? It really started young in my life, bro.
Yeah, and we talk to the kids at our school, and a lot of them come away from Utah, right, or come outside of Utah to Utah, and their parents think Utah is a safe place to live, and then they move to West Valley, they move to Rose Park, they move to Ogden, in places where they finds right?
Absolutely.
If they want to find it. So you moved from California to Hawaii. I'm sure you found friends that were just friends in California.
Absolutely.
And then when you went from gang life in California, did you also find gang life in Hawaii?
So I wouldn't necessarily even say that I was a part of gangs, right? I grew up around gang members, okay. but I've never been a Crip. I've never been a Blood. My brother at one point in his life, he was a Crip, right? And that thing, as far as like colors, as far as the blue and the red, it was never something that enticed me. It was never something that I was attracted to. I was more attracted to and more proud of the color of my skin, the fact that I was Samoan, the fact that I was Polynesian, right? The fact that I was a brown kid, the fact that I was Mexican, right? Mm-hmm. I was more proud of that. And being that I was raised more on my Polynesian side, that had an influence on me and who I was. So really, while everybody was out there, claiming red or claiming blue, I was a Uso. I was like a Uso. For a lot of listeners that don't know what Uso is, Uso is a strong word. It means brother in Samoan. Yeah. You know what I mean? You don't just throw that word around. You don't just call anybody Uso. And nowadays I feel like that word is thrown around, very lightly. But I come from an age where you earn the name of being called Uso. You know what I mean? So as far as gangs, I wasn't influenced by gangs, but I was for sure influenced by negative activities that I learned at a young age that could get me what I wanted, So When I was in Hawaii, that was my first job. I ended up moving back out to California. Now I'm back in California, and we was only out in Hawaii for I want to say 9 months, not very long. We moved around a whole lot.
Yeah, that's not very long at all.
Yeah, we never stayed. Our roots never really got dug in until we got back to California. And
did you move back to San Diego? Right?
Yeah, back to Dago. Back to San Diego. And another thing too, it was like when I was in Hawaii, I was in the 6th grade, right? And when I moved back to California, my mom took me to school, and it was different. I was like, damn, man, this little area is a little bit different. You know what I mean? And there was a lot of essays out there, a lot of Mexican. At that time, they're bald. A lot of Mexican gang members. Anyways. And I remember my mom taking me to school, and I was in the 6th grade. She went to enroll me, and they were like, "Oh no, he has to go to middle school because of his age, or where my birthday, October." They were like, "Yeah, he has to go to a middle school." So I'm a 6th grader at that point, bro, and I'm thinking, "Dang, I just got thrown into 7th and 8th grade was such a ominous thought, bro. When you're like thinking, "Dang, I'm in 6th grade, I'm about to go to middle school." You know what I mean? Ended up going to middle school, and that's for sure where I was around a lot of older kids. I probably had a little bit more influence as far as committing crime. So I started committing crimes at a young age, bro, and I learned that it got me what I wanted. you know. So I was in the system at a young age for sure.
Yeah. What were some of the things that you were commonly doing? You know, like what were the things that you were comfortable with?
I used to steal a lot, you know what I mean? I stole a lot of clothes, stole a lot of shoes, you know what I mean? I did a lot of thievery. And like I said, it eventually ended up to where as an adult now, you know, I'm robbing people, like straight up robbing them. Like, hey, homie, give me all your shit. Like with just my hands.
Just on the street.
Yeah, on the street. I'll be at a trolley station or something like, hey, bro, homie, you got $1? Like, no, I'm like, homie, give me all your shit. You know what I mean? And then if they didn't, I'd obviously get violent. You know what I mean? I was young. I was, you know, I got into a lot of fights too as well. So that was something that you know, I got involved in, that it affected my life later on as far as my anger. You know what I mean? It affected me a lot. It put me in positions where it sent me to prison, sent me to jail. You know what I mean? And hard drugs didn't really come into my reality, right? Until later on when I was like 20. You know what I mean? I mean, in California, it's taboo to talk about people smoking meth, especially in the Black and the Polynesian community at that time. Like nobody says, "Hey, bro, let's smoke a puddle or something," right? It's just not a thing, bro. It's like you talk about meth or anything, so they're either gonna be like, "Bro, what the fuck is that?"
Yeah,
or they're gonna be like, "Bro, you're a weirdo," because at that time we only smoked weed and drank 40s. You know what I mean? Drink beer. That was just it. That was what I grew up in. You know what I mean? So once I got older, and you know, drugs kind of came involved. You know, from selling drugs, I started doing the harder drugs. You know, it was just inevitable later on down the line that it was going to put me in a situation that was going to send me away. You know what I mean? And it eventually did.
And you know, a lot of kids don't come out and just say, "Oh yeah, I just started doing heroin right away. I didn't start doing coke right away. I didn't start doing meth right away." It's always the gradual alcohol, right? Weed, cigarettes, things like that. What was your first experience with a heavy drug, and how did that affect you?
So I was about 20 years old. Okay. And you know, I used to sell a lot of ecstasy pills, and like by the thousands, and at a young age. And you know, I started doing them. I started popping them. That's when it first started. And then because I was doing so good selling pills, you know, I wanted to venture out into other products to sell. So I said, you know what, man, I got a plug. Actually, somebody owed me money, and they were like, now that I think about it, they gave me like an ounce of, they're like, here, bro, just take this. You can move that. I was like, what the fuck is this? They're like, bro, that's soft. I'm like, what is cocaine?
So instead of giving you the money,
they gave me the money. They gave me some cocaine. Yeah. They gave me an ounce of cocaine. I was like, all right, cool. So I didn't know how to sell it. You know what I mean? So I started doing it. I started, you know, a few of my buddies had it, and they were like, yeah, dog. I'm like, homie, what you need it for? I'm like, I'm going to do it. I'm like, what? You about to do coke? Like, bro, you're a fucking weirdo. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And eventually, dude, I'm snorting rails, snorting lines. So that kind of led on to my my journey with drugs, bro, with hard drugs. So that was around the first time, around my 20s.
You don't hear a lot of people saying coke was their first hard drug.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty extreme.
Yeah, it was so I look, ecstasy, right? If we thought about that was probably the party drug, but to go from there to cocaine, yeah, for sure. That was a big jump for sure.
Yeah, two different effects. Too.
Yeah, absolutely. And at that time in my life, bro, like I said, bro, it's just, you know, I was like young, and you know, there was a lot of influence of like gangster movies and like shit like that. You know, my dad's is what's called a veterano. You know what I mean? My dad's a OG Southsider. You know what I mean? And he's inactive, but if you ask him, dog, he's still active. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
You know, so I had that influence of being around a real macho gangster man. Even though he gave his life to God, even though he went to church to try to help put his family in a better light and put the life behind him, because my dad was incarcerated in prison before too. So he tried to put that life away, right, by going to church. But even though that's what it was, my dad still looked different than other dads to me. My dad's all tatted up, you know, the way he talks, the way he walks, the way he dresses. So that had an influence on me, man. So at a young age, I would probably venture to say that I was, you know, in a way, you know, trying to be like my pops, trying to get that respect that my dad had, that air of, you know, I'm a macho G, you know what I mean? And that no matter what my dad to this day, he's a triple OG. You know what I mean? So, yeah, man.
So when you finally started getting into the adult incarceration system, right? You said you were in and out of juvie all the time.
Yeah.
And we both know it's pretty easy to get out of juvie.
Yeah.
Right. And they expunge your record pretty quick.
Yeah.
But once you become an adult, it's very different. So what was the first time you were arrested and sent to either prison or state?
So my being sent to jail, dude, it's like I was stealing. I had stole some clothes from the mall. I remember I was like 18. I was like 18. And I didn't graduate from high school. Obviously, I wasn't a high school graduate. So, my cousin had came out from Hawaii and he was kind of struggling too. My cousin Sino, shout out to my cousin Sino. He's doing great right now. He did about 10 years in the feds, but he's killing it right now.
Oh, that's awesome to hear.
Yeah, he's killing it right now. And so we tried to enroll in this vocational program for electricians. And we were out there trying to do better. You can get your high school diploma at the same time doing the vocational training, which you get becoming an electrician.
And this is before prison, right?
Yeah, this is before prison. So this is 18 years old. And we're in it's in downtown San Diego, and it was on a break. And I said, come on, let's go to the mall. We go to the mall, and that's when the new Sean John velour sweatsuits came out, the track suits, those fuzzy kind of Sean John suits.
Yeah.
So those were in, and those were dope. And I was like, you know what, dog, we're gonna go in there. Let's go get us some clothes. He's like, bro, how are we gonna do? I said, we're not gonna steal it. We're just gonna grab it, walk out with it. I've done it hundreds of times before. So, dude, we go in there. I grab a bunch of velour sweatsuits. He grabs a couple sweaters. A couple Echo sweaters. Those were into the Echoes with the rhino. And
I remember Echo.
Yeah, Echo Unlimited, bro. So yeah, that vibe of clothing was in. So, like I said, man, I grew up not having it. Well, I'm a part of a life with the have-nots. You know what I mean? So I did anything that I could to get what I wanted in my life. So I was applying that same knowledge that I utilized as a kid growing up, and now I'm 18 years old. I'm legally an adult. I'm applying those same habits. So I go into the store, grab my clothes. He grabs some clothes. We go walking out. We hit the street. We're walking. There's people walking there because it's an outdoor mall. There's people walking everywhere. And I turn and look, and I'm telling you, he's like at least 400 pounds. I turn, and he's just full speed running at me. And boom, he sacks me. Wow, hits me, bro. I hit the ground. Boom, he sits on me. And I remember I couldn't move, and I looked up, and my cousin was coming out the store with his clothes, and he looked at me. He dropped the clothes, and he was about to run at the dude, and I just went like that. Because in my head I'm like, bro, I'm already caught. We don't need both of us caught. So he ended up getting away. So and then they sent me to jail on that, bro. So that was my first time being incarcerated in jail. And the thing about, I did the majority of my incarcerations, whether it's jail or prison, out here in Utah. And it's a big difference because in the state of California, it's more political. In the state of California, when I say political, I'm talking about street politics as far as in the jail, in the county jail.
So the different gangs, different
it's very segregated. It's very political. You can't eat with the opposite race. You can't share commissary with the opposite race, especially if you come from certain neighborhoods, which I obviously fell along the lines of the neighborhoods that they were very strict on. So that was another thing that I learned very young: the politics of incarceration, the politics of jail. And I feel like being experiencing those things, I was being primed. You know what I mean, to go to prison.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer on the law of attraction. I'm a firm believer on manifesting things into your reality, right? And my dad.
So if you did mix, sorry for interrupting you on that. No, you did mix. What would happen? Like, what would people do to you if you mixed with someone else?
So as soon as you get to the San Diego County Jail, as soon as you get there, they're gonna hit you up. They're gonna be like, "Hey, homie, where you from?" And you know what I mean? Or what neighborhood you from? What race are you? You know what I mean? So those things are right as soon as you get there. And once they figure out, either you're Mexican or black, because there's the out here in the state of Utah, Polynesian car is a prevalent car. It's pretty deep, right? And it's pretty known. So out there, you don't say, even if you say you're Samoan, they're like, okay, you're black. You know what I mean? So you're with the blacks. But I'm Samoan and half Mexican. And they're like, oh yeah, you're Mexican. You know what I mean? So that's where it's like, okay, so who you riding with? You know what I mean? So you those are choices, bro. At 18 years old, like I'm making life changing decisions right now. About how am I going to experience this in jail? And I wasn't in there very long. You know what I mean? At that time, it was just a little theft charge. Ended up getting out. So, but yeah, man. So I think being incarcerated or experiencing juvenile hall and jail at such a young age, it was priming me for prison. But like I said about law of attraction and about manifesting things into your reality, bro, that you've either spoken upon or you've gave your energy to. Yeah. So the thing about manifesting things into your reality of thoughts that you've had, I feel like I was primed for prison, bro. My dad used to tell me at a young age. My dad used to be like, hey, son, if you ever go to prison, if you ever find yourself in prison, if you go in your cell and there's a candy and there's a candy on your pillow, don't take it. He used to always tell me things about like being in prison. You know what I mean? And I used to be like, we'll be at the dinner table, dog, and he's talking to me about this stuff, and I'm just like, yeah, whatever, Dad. But I'll never forget it. Eventually, I ended up in prison.
Yeah.
And those conversations would come to my head. You know what I mean? They're like, damn. And I would honestly, being that I at the time that I was in there, knowing what I knew about the law of attraction and manifestation, I thought about he unknowingly, you know what I mean, put that in my subconscious, which a conscious thought is one thing, but to lock it into your psyche, into your subconscious, that's what get the wheels turning. So yeah, man, being the direction and the trajectory I was on my way to prison. Eventually went to prison, but there was numerous jail stints in Salt Lake. You know what I mean? I actually came out of Salt Lake on the run. I came out here on the run from a different charge, and while I was out here, I ended up getting incarcerated, catching a case out here, and the case that I was on the run for came about too. So those are different things, different stories. But I feel like being in jail, bro, it taught me about being around people in that life, you know what I mean? And seeing that on a regular basis from being incarcerated. I caught my first case out here in Salt Lake. I think I want to say 2009, 2010. But there was many cases, bro, that led up to me being incarcerated in prison. You know what I mean?
Yeah. When did you move to Utah?
I moved to Utah in 2007.
2007.
Yeah, 2007. And one of the first cities we like you said, people sleep on Utah. Yeah. It's like, oh, Utah, bro, what? Utah, man, what the fuck is out there? You guys got what? Little Brazzy? There's like this little kid, Little Brazzy or something out here. He's like, he got like a whole lot of followers, but he's like, is what people think, what gangsterism is out here in Utah. Is this little white kid that says the N-word. I mean, he's not the hard R, obviously, but he's just saying the N-word.
I have no idea who he is.
Yeah, dude. I've been seeing it, bro. But so when I moved out here, that was on my head. Like, I remember my mom was like, "Man, I'm in Utah." She was like, "Son, I'm out here in Utah." I had just got out from a different state I was incarcerated in, and
so your mom moved out here first?
Yeah, my mom moved out here first, and she was like, "Son, move out here to Utah." She knew I was like kind of going on she knew I was going on the run. So she was like, move out here to Utah. They'll never find you. And I was just like my exact words was, what the fuck is a Utah? I didn't even know what the hell Utah was, bro. I never heard of Utah. I wasn't, I didn't even know where it was geographically on the map, bro. Mm-hmm. So I ended up moving out here. And then I thought the same thing at first, like, bro, Utah, man, ain't no thugs out here. Come on, bro. There's suburbs out here. You know what I mean? But one of the first cities I moved out here to was West Valley, like we just mentioned. And West Valley's cutthroat. West Valley got a lot of polys, a lot of ethnic people, even a lot of white people too. But just being in that city and coming out here, you learn real quick. That you don't sleep on Utah, or don't even sleep on any state you're in, dog. Because there's poverty. Where there's poverty, there's violence. Where there's violence, there's addiction. Where there's addiction, there's incarceration. And where these things are prevalent in these neighborhoods, bro, they're never an easy place to grow up in. You know what I mean? So 2007, I moved out here, and West Valley was the first place I moved. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we get a lot of kids in my school from West Valley, Rogue Park, Ogden, all those areas, right?
Yeah, bro.
And they have a lot of gang activity up there, a lot of drug activity. And like you said, people look at Utah and say, "Oh yeah, it's going to be safe." There's the areas,
bro,
right?
and the youth is affected. You know, I want to say 15, not even 15, like 2 years ago. You know, you could there's probably 11 convicted killers that were youth. 11. Right now, there's about 50 of them inside the detention facilities right now, waiting to go to prison. So those numbers are growing because of poverty, because of drug addiction, because of gang affiliation. And this is not just gang affiliation. Like, hey, I'm 15, I want to gangbang now. No, these a lot of times these kids are primed. Like I said, I was primed to go to prison. A lot of times these kids are being prepped and primed from uncles, from brothers, from family friends that are older gang members. So they come from a long lineage of gang members, right? They didn't just wake up one day and say, hey, I want to be a gangbanger and go kill somebody. Don't get me wrong, that does happen as well. But for the most part, from what we get from the guys in there, because I do a lot of work with Day One. Shout out to the Day One boys, Des and Solo. They go into the DT. My boy Michael Ulibarri, they go into the DT detention facility for the youth. And I'm hearing these stories and these information of like, man, dude, the most responses that we get from these guys, these young kids that are 15, 16, 17, waiting to go to prison to serve life sentences for murder, is because uncle, somebody older, somebody in their family, some brother. So that's the byproduct of coming from of neighborhoods like that. And Utah is not
We're not exempt.
Not exempt, bro, at all, for sure, man. So yeah, dude. So 2007 moved out here.
Yeah, you know, going back on that, it's crazy because you say, oh, kids are being groomed into that, right? They're being ready for that. We just had a thing with the gang task force here in Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
And he said majority of gang leaders, 15 to 18 years old.
Yeah, bro.
And they're starting them on their own, right? Yep. They're not following the norm. They're doing their own thing, saying, oh, hey, I went this way. I have this. And it's crazy how young they get.
Yeah, bro.
Younger and younger. And so it's not uncommon anymore. And all of the JGYS facilities are starting to get too full.
That's what I'm saying, bro. Like there was just what the kid that in West Valley, those 3 people that got killed, including the young child, which was a Polynesian family, man. You know, condolences to the families that have been affected by that specific situation in the West Fest. You know what I mean? My heart goes out to them. My heart not only goes out to the family and of the slain loved ones, but the families. But not only just the families. You have a young kid who is so easy to be influenced by whatever it is he's been influenced in his life to shoot into a crowd, and kill at random anyone, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't come from that life. I come from a life where, hey, you're gonna pull your gun out, you're gonna use it, you're gonna be precise with it. You're gonna either walk up and do what you got to do, or you're not gonna pull it out. Kids, for one, you see kids, that's a no-go. So so shootouts at carnivals. They don't happen like that from where I come from. It happens, but not the way that situation happened, man. So it's sad, bro.
It is.
It's sad, man. It's very sad to see our youth being so affected by influence, bro.
Oh, by influence. Sure. So let's go into where you are today, right? Yeah. You went to prison again.
I did. Well, I've never. This was actually the first time I went to prison. I've been in and out of jail. But prison was this last prison sentence was my first and my last.
That was the first time.
Yeah.
And that was at the Utah State Penitentiary.
Yeah, Utah State Penitentiary.
So when you went in and you said you didn't graduate high school.
No.
Right? You still hadn't graduated by this point. And now with how successful you are, right? You obviously went back to school, started doing some certifications and things. Guide everyone through that, because a lot of people think, oh, I'm in prison. When I get out, there's nothing I can do. But you're a testament that that's not true, that you actually can do stuff while you're in prison to better your life.
Absolutely, man. I love that question, man. You know, because I get a lot of responses and feedback to a lot of what I do, right? You know, I do a lot of prison reform. I do a lot of prison work. I talk a lot about my story, right? And to some people, you know, it seems like a positive thing. They're like, man, yeah, but to some, to the word clout is thrown around, right? Mm-hmm. You record in the prison for clout. No, I don't do it for clout. I do it for awareness. I do it so you guys see that there's men incarcerated that have life charges, that have drug offenses, that whatever their their charges are across the board that are doing their best to change their life through schooling, through education, through substance abuse treatment. Now, you guys would never know that if I didn't step foot in those prisons with these cameras, right? If I didn't step foot in these prisons with these cameras and show you guys that not only I was able to get my life together through education, through substance abuse treatment, through life skills management, any type of those things that the prison had to offer, and got out and became successful in life. They hear about the ones going in and out of prison.
Yeah.
They hear about the ones that are reoffending. They hear about the ones that get out from committing a crime and then they end up killing somebody. They hear about that all the time. So that's what I do. I go into the prison and I document, right? I build this resume, bro. I build this resume and to show the world, to show people like, look, man, we're not just scum. A lot of times we're good people who make bad mistakes, right? So when I walked out of prison, I walked out with a high school diploma. I walked out with a culinary arts degree. I walked out with 2 years of substance abuse treatment, one-on-one therapy, 2 years of group therapy. I was 7 years clean because I stayed clean the whole time I was in prison. I created the best version of myself from behind bars. I created that high vibrational man that I knew that was going to be needed to step out of those prison gates and be different than I was before, right? Yeah. So a lot of people don't, like I said, a lot of people don't know that. They say, they throw the word around clout. I just heard this the other day. I'm just like, bro, what? Clout? Like, homie, you don't come from the life I come from. You know what I mean? This is coming from somebody who never experienced the life that I've experienced. You know what I mean? And so it kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. So I'm glad you asked that question because I felt like that needed to be clarified, right? Because guys that come from my life, that come from what I came from, statistically, we don't make it out. You go to prison, statistically, you're going to go back. You go to prison, statistically, you're going to continue to, you suffer from addiction, statistically, you're going to continue to suffer from addiction, right? We're not on the winning side. We're not, right? As far as addiction, as far as incarceration. So like you said, I'm a testament, right? I went in there and I created the best version of myself and stepped out of those prison bars. And now I'm leveraging and using my story to tell the world, to tell people who are suffering from addiction, to tell people who suffer from incarceration. But not only that, to go back into the prison and to show the inmates that I actually sat there and did time with, actually sat there and did years with. Like, look, Oos, look, homie, I was in here with you. Let me show you how I did it. Let me tell you how I did it, right? So yeah, man, like you said, a lot of people don't know that you know that prisons offer these programs. Prisons offer high school diploma programs. Mm-hmm. They offer collegiate programs. They offer substantive. So the prison, you know, they're not just, a lot of prisons are just about housing inmates. You know, a lot of prisons out there in the South, and you know, because I've done time in the South too, and then they don't have programs like that, right? So fortunately, I was able to be incarcerated in the Utah State Prison. You know, even at the time, you know, it was still an authoritarian type of prison, which prison should be, but it was mainly a prison to just house you. You know, house you, then kick you out. You know, the prison has been under new management for the past 3 years. I've done a lot of work with Glenn Mills, Brian Redd, who is now the Salt Lake City. I believe he's the captain of the Salt Lake City now Police Department, Salt Lake County. Mm-hmm. Brian Redd, he used to be the executive director of the whole Utah Department of Corrections. Maria Sherry, Rebecca Brown. These are all new names that have moved up the ranks, and because they did a whole new revamp of the prison. Yeah. And bro, it went from being to house inmates to rehabilitating men,
which is what we need in this society.
Bro, absolutely, dog. And since that's happened, there's so many good programs that are going on right now. The Solid program. They started a program in prison called the Solid program, which is for inmates by inmates, right? Mm-hmm. But they teach each other life skills. They teach each other how to be better men. I go in there on a regular basis to do what I do. I'm actually going in there August 30th. I'm taking Kyle Kilau Singh, which is
Kyle came to my school.
Yeah, Kyle's a good
he's a man. He's speaker.
Great speaker, bro. You know, he went from a drug addict, Hawaii's most wanted, to top motivational speaker in the country. You know what I mean? So I'm taking him in there to the prisons just to show the men too, like, hey, look, man, you guys are not the only ones. Of course, we see all the ones that come in and out. We see that on a regular basis. We got family members that are going to continue to deal with addiction. We got family members that are going to continue to deal with incarceration, right? But let me show you what it looks like to come from that life and to pull yourself up out of the trenches, to pull yourself out of the darkness and use that darkness that you've willingly walked in through to shine that light for somebody else, for the youth, for men that's still looking for help. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's the best thing is that you're doing it, because if I walked into a prison and said, hey guys, get your diploma, they're going to look at me like, what are you talking about? Like, who are you?
Absolutely.
You don't know me. You don't know the experience I have, but you've gone through it.
Absolutely.
So being able to go in and say, hey, I did it. I'm the one who's successful. Follow me. This is how you do it.
Absolutely.
So if someone is in prison and they don't know where to start, like and they're here in Utah, right? Because that's where you're at. Where would they go, or who would they talk to in prison to start high school diploma?
Okay, so what they would do is they would write education. That's the first thing they would do. They would get a kite, which is called a prison kite, which is prison mail. It's within the prison, right?
Mm-hmm.
You put down education and you say, hey, I want to start my high school diploma. Just easy as that, and then you'll get started. And the funny thing about me getting my high school diploma, I was incarcerated in prison from 2012 to 2019. It was in 2013. I had been in prison for like 6-7 months. I had a job working in the kitchen because I wanted to provide for myself. I didn't want to have to rely on my wife, you know what I mean, to send me money. So I was working a 40 cents an hour job to get $120 a month to buy my hygiene, to pay for whatever I needed, right, to support myself while I was incarcerated. And I remember going in there, and I knew I wanted to get my high school diploma. So you know what? I enrolled. I said, man, and I started from 0 credits. I wrote, got a kite, wrote to do the high school diploma program, started school. So I was doing school in the day and working at night, the graveyard shift, because I was washing dishes at night in the prison. So you're washing 27, and then you would prep breakfast too. So like, dude, I'm working graveyard shift, and I remember going to school. Like, I'd go back after work, sleep for like 2 hours, get up, and go to school in prison. And I'll be in school and I'll be like falling asleep. So I knew, I was like, dog, I can't continue doing this.
Yeah.
So I went to my job. I went to one of the officers, which was our bosses, because the officers are the ones who run the kitchen, just run everything, right? So that was my boss. I went and talked to him. I said, hey, man, look, I'm thinking about quitting my job because I'm having a hard time paying attention in school, and I want to focus on getting my diploma. And he was cool, man. He was like, yeah, man. His name was actually Walter, which ended up later on, after I got out of prison, he ended up being my parole officer.
Oh, okay.
And it worked out so great because he already knew the type of inmate I was, right? That I wasn't looking for trouble. But that's a whole nother story. But so he's like, yeah, man, of course, man. Just when you want to work back, just come back when you're done. So I quit. And then, so now I had all day to focus on school. So you usually do 4 hour, like you go for 4 hours a day, but they have 2 different times you can go 4 hours a day. You can go 4 hours a day in the morning and 4 hour days in the evening. So I did the full 8 hours. I went to school 4 hours in the morning and 4 hours in the evening. And I got 20. I actually you needed 24 credits to graduate. I graduated with 26. I graduated with 26 credits in 4 months. So, and to the typical person, to the normal person, it's like, oh, bro, it's high school, dog. Like that's easy, bro. But coming from somebody like myself, dog, I've always been smart, but dude, I showed myself, by doing that, by getting that high school diploma. Like, man, I can do it. And I never thought of going to college. Nowhere, college was never on my mind. But the byproduct of accomplishing something like that, as far as your educational career, it just taught me like, hey, I can continue this. I could do this. That's probably one of the first things in my life that I started and finished. Never had a driver's license. Never had any type of anything, any type of certifications for anything in my life. So when I got my high school diploma and I knocked it out so easy, I remember my wife coming to my graduation, man, in prison. We got our gown on. Under our gown, we got our prison uniform.
That's awesome.
I'll never forget seeing my wife out there just crying. She was just so happy that that I accomplished something. And I remember talking to her a few weeks later, and she was like, "Yeah, well, how you doing? Graduation, boy. You over there getting your high school diploma? What you gonna do now?" You know what? I said, you know what? I think I want to go to college. I think I want to go to college. And I would never have thought that, man. But that's the thing, man. What I teach guys too in prison is like, bro, educate yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Educate yourself. You know what I mean? And it's like that's step 3 in one of my I'm working on this. I'm actually working on a program called the four steps I took in prison to get out and stay out. And step 3 is educate yourself. You know what I mean? And I talk about how, strategically putting yourself in a position to be able to financially support your family, your reality is important.
Yeah.
Because a lot of us are in there for selling drugs. A lot of us are in there committing crimes that involve weapons because we were trying to steal to provide for ourselves, or whatever fashion or shape or form that looked like, right? So that's what I knew. I knew I was going to get released from prison one day, and I needed to put myself in a better position. So yeah, dude. So college was just the next thing that I was just like, all right, cool, we're gonna do it.
Yeah. And who does the state of Utah partnership with?
So the state of Utah still partners with Davis Tech. So with Davis Tech, they're out of Kaysville. It used to be Davis Technical College, but now I think it's just Davis Tech. Excuse me. So yeah, I got my degree out of Davis Tech. It's in Kaysville. But you can also do correspondence college through Stanford. So you can go to I got a buddy in there right now named Shawnee, a Polynesian dude who's been in there for like 25 years. He got a PhD in prison.
And PhD
in theology. So he's really deep Mormon. He's Mamonga is how we say it in Samoan. So he's really devout Mormon. And yeah, dude. So he reads a lot about the Bible. So he went to college for the Bible. He got a PhD in theology, bro. So he's what was that considered a doctor?
Yeah,
a doctor. Yeah, bro. So yeah, so there's different avenues you can take as far as educating yourself in prison. And like I said, dude, that's a super important thing. I knew I was going to get out one day, so I did some research of what would be the best. Because even though you get a degree, the fact that you're a convicted felon, that still affects that. Yep. You know what I mean? Like they'll still hire somebody who doesn't have a felony with the same education, as opposed to somebody who has that same accolade but with a felony. You know what I mean? So I did some research, me and my wife, with my wife, about what would be the top careers in the state of Utah to be a convicted felon. And culinary arts was one, welding was another, electrician was one, and mechanic. And all the other 3, bro, I'm not like a dirty hands kind of like my hands are callous, not from working hard. They're callous from hitting the gym. You know what I mean? So yeah, bro. So culinary arts was the one. I told my wife, I said, yeah, man, I want to go to culinary school. And so I wrote who I needed to write about. Yeah, hey man, how do I go to culinary school? How do I go about accomplishing that? And they're like, yeah, well, you can't go to culinary school until you go to the substance abuse treatment program, because the actual college kitchen is in the building that's a substance abuse treatment program. Right? Oh, so they have so you have to go there to be able to attend the culinary arts. So that kind of felt like a speed bump, because I didn't have a date yet, and I was only incarcerated. I was only incarcerated for like inside of a year at that time, and you really you can't go to the substance abuse treatment program, which is called Conquest, which is a great program, until you get a date. And I didn't get a date until I was already 5 years in. I didn't even get a board date till I was like 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So typically, bro.
So you had to wait for a while.
I had to wait, bro. But so typically, if I wanted to do something in life, say I was on the street and like, hey man, I want to get a job. Now I want to try to do good. And I go and I don't get a job. I don't, something doesn't happen the way I want it to. I go back to what I know. I go back to selling drugs.
Yep.
I go back to robbing. Then now I'm getting high again. Now I'm arguing with my wife. I'm getting kicked out now a lot, going through all that the whole chaotic, horrible existence of addiction and living that life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So typically that's what I would do. But being that I was drug free in prison, I wasn't getting high. I just got my high school diploma. I had built some confidence. You know what? I easily could have, you know what? Fuck this. I'm going to just go do drugs in prison. I'm going to sell drugs in prison. I'm going to just keep fucking up. Nah, you know what? I said, man, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just continue working and do some life skills. I did a lot of life skills classes. And eventually, like 5 years later, I got pulled to Conquest. I got pulled to the substance abuse treatment program. So I was like, cool. I was like, all right, cool, man. I'm about to go to college. I still didn't know when I was going to be released because I didn't have a date.
Yeah.
And
so you got to go to college. It took a while, right?
Yeah.
And then you got to go to the culinary school, which you had to do the substance abuse rehab also, right?
Yeah. So I was waiting, bro, to go. Like I was saying, I was waiting to get to, because I wanted to go to the culinary arts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So 5 years later, I get pulled to Conquest. So I'm like, cool, I'm about to go to college. I get there, I get into the program, and I go and see my counselor. I'm like, hey, I know they got culinary arts here. How do I enroll? I want to start culinary arts. He said, bro, you can't do culinary arts until you graduate. Graduate what? The substance abuse program. I said, what? And I said, how long is the program? He said, a year, 365 days. So it was another lightweight speed bump, right? I could have easily been like, man, fuck this. I'm not gonna wait a whole nother year to go to college. I completed the substance abuse treatment program. I'm talking, bro, that program is out there, is cutthroat. Boots on the ground, 5 a.m., programming till you go to bed damn near.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I did that for 360. I actually graduated a day early. 364 days, I got my graduation from substance abuse treatment program.
Congratulations,
extensive,
man.
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate that. Granted, by the time I got there, I was 5 years drug free, right? And I didn't have no programming before that. I wasn't learning about drug abuse or nothing like that. I did some anger management, some relationships, some life skills programs. Yeah. You know, but I didn't do anything that taught me about drugs. But the thing about it is, I didn't need it. The fact that I was staying away from drugs, I organically was becoming the man that I'm supposed to be, because I wasn't succumbing to my vice. I wasn't being clouded by being addicted to drugs. I wasn't being clouded by constantly being high. So my mind was already maturing, already growing to where catching up to the years that I took off from getting high. You know what I mean? So once I got there, even I remember my first week with my therapist. He was like, bro, he was this black man named Mr. McLeod. Got a lot of love for Mr. McLeod. We still email back and forth to this day. But he's like, man, you got it. He's like, man, you've been doing the work over there. I could tell. He said, he used to always tell me, he said, but now the true test is when you hit that gate. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I ended up graduating the program. And then I enrolled in culinary arts, right? And I remember, I came to another fork in the road where it's like, okay, you graduated. Now you can go back to population, where all the riffraff is, where all the drugs are, where all the problems are, where all that, you don't have to program anymore. You could just sleep all day and do whatever you want. You know, I came across that decision. I could have, and I didn't. I enrolled in school, and it took me a year to finish school. Another year, I was still in prison. So I graduated in a year, and when I graduated, I had 3 months till I was going to be released. And that was another situation, was like, okay, now you can go back to population. You know what I mean? But I
keep trying to push you back.
Yeah, dog. You know what? And that's your mind. That's the right. That's the negative side of your reality, and the positive side. We all have that side. As men, we all have that, of that negative conscious and that positive conscious, and just like, hey, you could go do this, but no, you got to do this, right? And it's all about. It's like that proverb, right? You got that I've heard about. You know, where you have two wolves, right? And the one that's going to be the strongest is the one that you feed the most, yep. Right? And since I've been feeding positivity into the positive wolf, you know, it was easy for me to make that decision. Like, you know what, I'm gonna stay here. I'm parole from here. So 3 months later, I got paroled, bro. Then I walked out of prison with a high school diploma, culinary arts degree, substance abuse treatment program, 7 years of dissecting myself, 7 years of learning myself, 7 years of getting my addiction under control and realizing my superpower, right? Knowing that I was going to need to utilize it for my reality when I get out. You know what I mean? So, yeah, dude. And I never looked back.
So here's what's awesome about it. You have the degree, right? You've done it. But here's the hard part. How do you get a job now? So how did you get where you're at today, and what are you doing today? Like, let everyone know how life's going right now for you.
Oh man, that's a good question. Right now, I'm the director of health and nutrition at the Renaissance Ranch in Bluffdale, Utah. It's one of the leading treatment centers for men who are suffering from addiction and suffering from incarceration as well. We got numerous locations around the state of Utah. We also have one in the state of Idaho, right? And you know, I didn't just get out of prison and get this job, right? You know, I landed this career that I have in the space of helping men and utilizing my story to help benefit them, but also but also putting together nutritious meals for them. And I'm also their personal trainer too, because I got my CPT when I got out of prison. So I'm
nice.
I'm a certified personal trainer as well. But yeah, dude. So a few weeks before I got released from prison, I had just graduated culinary school. Mike Serasio, which is a great man. He was the instructor. He was my instructor from Davis Tech that would go and teach the guys at culinary arts. So he was an instructor from Davis Tech. So before I got out, he was like, hey, he gave me this card. He gave me a card and said, here. He said, hey, man, because he gained a lot of respect for me. I still am in contact with him to this day. He's someone that I can call on if I ever need it, and he's a great man. But he gave me a card and said, hey, man, this is the man. This is my friend. She's a manager at Red Lobster. It's the Red Lobster in Murray. And he's like, give her a call. He's like, man, I've been telling her about you, and you're going to get out, and you're going to get out soon. He said, I got you a seat at the table. You got to do the rest. So I'll never forget. I was inside of a week of being out of prison. Gave her a call. She said, hey, man, come in. She said, I'm anxious to meet you. I went in and I told her my story. She just started crying. And she just, wow. I'll never forget, bro. She was like, man, I want to hire you. She gave me the job right then and there. And dude, like, bro, like I said, man, it's a scary thing to think of, man, getting out of prison. I'm a convicted felon. I don't got no education. It's a lot of guys do that, get out like that. You know what I mean? Fortunately, I was able to get an education, right? And that's why I say it's better strategically put yourself in a better position. But you got a lot of men that are like that, bro. They get out of prison and they don't know where to start. They don't know where to begin. Nobody wants to give them a chance. And to be able to sit across from a table from a woman like that, we come from two totally different lives, to just give me that chance. You know what I mean? So that's how I started. Inside of a week out of prison, I was immediately just graduated culinary school, was immediately thrown on the front line, on the front line in a kitchen in Red Lobster, which was a hot kitchen for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, bro, that's where it started as far as me being in the career, utilizing my culinary arts degree. And I was getting paid $15 an hour, man. But I felt like that's not where my life was going to be. Don't get me wrong. You can make a living off that. But being the things that I've accomplished in my life and gaining the confidence I have as the man that I've become, I knew I was worth more, right? So I would continue look for better positions, better jobs. And I was there for like 4 months. Ended up getting there was a position for a banquet chef, and one of the requirements was you had some type of education as far as in culinary arts, and I happened to have that, and I went to there, and I was only at Red Lobster for like 4 months, but I went to the Marriott. I was a banquet chef at the Marriott by the University of Utah, so it was University Park Marriott, and I was a banquet chef there for like almost 2 years, and I remember going to meet them too. Like my resume, was full because I was in prison working.
Yeah.
So on my resume, I worked in the kitchen where Utah Department of Corrections. They don't know whether or not if I'm an inmate or they don't know that, right? So that's on my resume. So and so years. What did I do? I worked in kitchen, fed this many people. And then I had different jobs in there. So those were all on my resume. So when I got hired and they interviewed me at the Marriott, they had questions about, yeah, man, so you got your schooling, so you were in the prison. I was like, yeah. And then I talked to him. He kind of felt my energy. He knew I was about what I was really about, what I was about. So then I told him, I said, man, I was incarcerated in the Utah State Prison. He said, really? Man, I wouldn't even tell. I couldn't even tell. I said, yeah, I literally just got out 4 months ago. Man, how long? I was in there for about almost 7 years. And man, he was another one that took a chance on me. His name was man, his name is slipping my mind right now, but he was another great man too. He died. He ended up overdosing. Unfortunately, a lot of guys that are in the industry of the cooking industry, a lot of guys get high, man. And he was one of them. So yeah, so I had that job. So I always constantly was looking for a better position. I'm always constantly trying to grow. I'm always constantly trying to better myself in every facet of my life, whether it's my career, whether it's being a father, whether it's being a partner, whatever that looks like. I'm always trying to become better. And I'm just, and that's something that I was practicing in prison that I carried out into the free world, right?
Yep.
And so COVID happened. 2021, right? Was it 2021?
2019.
2019,
That was my
2020?
first year as a principal.
Yeah,
so I
so
totally remember that.
bro, so yeah, dude. So they ended up furloughing a lot of workers, and I was obviously in management because I was a banquet chef, so I made the skeleton crew. So I worked there for a little bit, and then they were like, "Hey, man, business is getting really bad. We just gotta lay you off, put you on furlough for a little bit until things pick back up." I'm like, "All right, cool." So even then, it's like, since being incarcerated in prison and teaching myself, man, when adversity comes into my life, don't run from adversity. Lean into that adversity. Lean into those trials and tribulations that you may face, and just muscle through it, because at the end you're going to come out stronger, faster, and smarter. Right? I was practicing that in prison. So now here comes another tribulation. I got furloughed. What am I going to do? Am I going to go sell drugs, try to provide for my family? No. They're sending out stimmy checks. Am I going to use these stimmy checks to go fuck off my life and become worse? Maybe take a stimmy check, buy an ounce, and try to flip that ounce to turn that stimmy check into more money? Am I going to do that? Absolutely not. I use that money and say, you know what? I'm going to continue to educate myself. So I used the stimulus checks to pay for my certified personal trainer certification, because, in prison, I used to be like, man, I worked out a lot. I started fitness in prison, and I got healthy in prison. So that thought was always in my mind too. You know what? I could be a personal trainer. So I used the STEMI check during COVID. I ended up getting certified as a personal trainer, and then I dabbled with that for a little bit after the world opened back up after COVID. After it opened back up, everybody was kind of sticking their foot in the water, like, can we come out?
Yeah,
you know what
slowly,
I mean?
right?
Yeah, slowly coming out. So it was just the wrong time to be in the fitness business. It was the wrong time. Even though there was a lot of information about, oh yeah, you'll be all right. You get the vaccine shot. People were still leery about being in close proximity to people. So, I ended up getting hired at Vasa Fitness, and it was just rough, dog. It was just, nobody wanted to get trained. People were still weird about being around each other. Yeah. So the money wasn't good.
Yeah.
And you know what? I said, you know what? I'm gonna go back to what I know. And instead, not before, it was the dope game. Now it's the food game. So I went back to the kitchen. Ended up getting another job as a chef. Did that for a little bit, and I'll never forget this, man. I ended up getting a call from the Renaissance Ranch, and they were like, "Hey, man, we saw your resume. We saw your resume online. We're looking for a chef." And I'll never forget this. I was like, "Yeah, but I just want to be honest with you, because I'm a convicted felon. I've been in prison. I've also suffered from addiction. I want you guys to know that I've been in recovery this long, blah, blah, blah." And they said, "Man, you're exactly who we want. Let's just come over here. Let's talk, and we'll see where we can go." And that was 3.5 years ago, man. I've been there ever since. I started off as the house chef. Eventually implemented my my certification as a certified personal trainer, and my knowledge of being an addict, and using fitness to fuel my sobriety. We implemented a program in the Renaissance Ranch where we train the guys. We train them on a weekly basis. We feed them healthy foods. We try to have them tap into that breaking yourself down, right, to become the best version of yourself. So I implemented that there. And eventually I worked my way up to being the director of health and nutrition. So I oversee a lot of the other houses. We collaborate a lot, because we've grown exponentially in the past year. And so that's where I'm at right now.
So when you see the difference of people when they actually focus on nutrition, right? After addiction, especially, focus on exercise. What kind of differences do you see in them? Now we're going into your profession.
Oh, bro,
right?
You see a big difference. They start feeling more confident about themselves. I can't tell you how many countless men who have came and I've trained them, and they've trimmed up, and they get a visit, because in the program they're able to see their wife every now and then, their family. So I remember this guy came up to me. He lost 18 pounds. He was morbidly obese, which a lot of us are. Like, in America, that's just what it is. And he came to me, man. He had a big old smile on his face, and I was like, "What's up, bro?" He was actually a cop, but he was like, "What's up, bro?" He's like, "Man, bro, my wife, she wrapped her arms around me, and she felt it. She felt that I trimmed up." So she mentioned it. She was like, "Oh, baby, you're getting skinny." So it made him feel good, man. When you're able to break yourself down, rule number 2 in my steps that I took to get out of prison and stay out was exercise. Rule number 1 is stay off drugs and people who do drugs. Step number 2 is exercise. And exercise is not about looking good. It's not about It's not about building the aesthetic that you want. Don't get me wrong. That's a byproduct of that. People do that. But when you suffer from addiction, that's not the purpose of why you're working out. When you're working out, you're breaking yourself down. You're teaching yourself to sit in the comfortability of constantly doing something that you may not want to do. I may not want to get up at 5 a.m. and do an hour and a half workout. I may not want to do a whole 8-hour shift and then have to go to the gym and work out right after. But when you're training yourself to sit in that uncomfortability, to force yourself to put yourself through that pressure to become the best version of yourself, that's rewiring the synapses of your brain as an addict to continue to fight to be better. So, man, I've watched so many men change and so many men grow, and unfortunately, I've watched a lot of men who have came through our program and who have got out and died. If there's like, I could count 5 or 6, 7 of them right now in my mind that, I knew they were going to make it. After training them, I knew I would pour into them, pour my energy into them, pour my experience into them with incarceration, pour my experience into them with addiction and what I use, the tools that I utilize to better myself, just fully pour into them. And when they graduated, I just knew, man, you're going to make it, bro. I can't wait. And then to see that they ended up falling off and unfortunately passed away, man, bro, that's a reality that we deal with as men and women in this industry, in this I don't even want to say industry, in this reality that we're a part of on the front lines of fighting addiction, of fighting incarceration. You know what I mean? And so,
yeah, we see it.
The growth is big.
We see it at our school all the time, right? You don't see the success stories very often. You see the ones that made the paper because the paper doesn't care about success. Just like you said, they don't pay attention and report, hey, these prisoners got their high school diplomas. Let's congratulate them. If someone gets out and creates another crime or commits another crime, right? That's who they report on.
Absolutely.
That's who they want to see because that's the story. They want the viewership.
Absolutely.
But we see it all the time with our kids because we've seen multiple kids get arrested. They go to jail.
Yeah.
We've seen kids who have gone back to their lifestyle, right? But the ones you don't hear about are the ones that are success. Like we teach a firefighting class at our school.
That's great.
And we have 2 kids who went from drug rehab to firefighting now.
Oh, wow.
And one of them's a full-time one. Yeah, it's awesome. And one of them's full-time and one of them is still finishing his training. So how often do you see people afterwards connect with you again after this and the success that they share with you?
Yeah, so I run into a lot of guys that are successful. Like one of the guys that got out of our program not too long ago, which his name is Josh, but I knew him in prison as Lurch, as Big Lurch. Yeah, okay. Lurch was his name. So he's like a very tall guy, very lanky. So he has that Lurch look. But anyways, I come into work the other day. He's in the office and he's looking good, man. I'm just like, heck yeah, bro, you looking good, man. He got his truck out front. I said, that's your truck out front? Yeah, it has a logo of a construction company. I said, is that your company? He said, yeah, bro. I just hugged him, man. I said, heck yeah, bro. That's what I'm talking about. So, like I said, there's a lot of men that make it and there's a lot of men that don't, bro. That's unfortunately. Yeah. But I happen to be in the reality and in the career with the Renaissance Ranch. We have a high success rate. And this is just from my experience, right? I'm sure if we did some numbers, bro, we got a high success rate for changing lives, for allowing men to the capacity and the knowledge to utilize to grow from addiction and incarceration. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I love the story.
Absolutely.
It's a great story. I think so many people can relate to it.
Yeah.
What they've gone through. And you being able to be open up and just tell it. I hope someone sees this and says, hey, I'm in that same situation. He did it, so can I.
Yeah. And see my story, bro, and the impact it could have would stop if I didn't choose to talk about it, if I didn't choose to share it. And right now we happen to be in a world of social media. We happen to be in a world where cameras are always rolling, right? I'm going to capitalize on that. I'm going to capitalize on that because I'm going to exacerbate my crowd that I could reach, right? I don't know if that's the right word, but I'm going to have it reach the major capacity of people as opposed to just telling it to someone.
Yeah.
Right. So that's important where we're at. So like what you're doing with the podcast, man, it's a great thing, bro. What you're doing, sharing stories, sharing information that people could utilize in their reality that are either suffering from addiction or suffering from someone who has a kid that's maybe struggling. Cause I know you're in the youth industry, right?
Yep.
Like these are things that, bro, nutrition, Dad bod, bro. I love dad bod. I fucking love dad bod. One of the guys brought it up the other day. He's like, yeah, man, dad bods is a new thing. I'm like, bro, I got a dad bod. I mean, you guys might think, damn, bro, you're looking big and ripped. Dude, I really got a dad bod. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how I feel. I mean, I sometimes I could break my dad. I could be my worst critic when it comes physically. That's probably something that I need to work on. But bro, dad bod is where it's at. Everybody can relate to it. 95% of men can relate to having a dad bod. And dad bod to me is more than just the physical thing. You know what I mean? We're dads, bro. We work hard. We provide for our kids. We provide for our family.
Right.
But we're warriors, bro. We don't stop. I may have a gut. You may have a six pack. I still get up. I still get up and go get this money and bring the bag home to my wife and kids. You know what I mean?
That's right. Well, thank you so much for coming, man.
Absolutely.
This has been awesome. I really appreciate you making the trip down here, coming in the studio.
Absolutely, bro.
And you know, and I'm going to tag you in this.
Yeah, so absolutely, bro.
Everyone can follow you and check your story. And if you guys have any questions for him, hit him up on social media. He responds right away. He's made videos about his experiences. It's great. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Let's go.